Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Charity Charge Show. Today, I am pleased to be joined by Juan Caballero. He is the CEO of Build Change, and they are all about creating disaster resilience in every home in emerging economies across the United States. Juan, I am so excited to talk with you today. Tell me a little bit more about the work that you're doing out there to build change.
Yeah, we work in housing and other types of buildings for disaster resilience, as you rightly say, all across the globe, actually, all across the planet, mainly in emerging economies. I've been at Build Change for the better part of 14 years and started in Haiti after the earthquake there and worked my way up, did every job at the organization. And now I've been the CEO for the past 6 months.
Amazing. How has it been these past 6 months, kind of stepping into that role and taking over as well from a founder of the organization? How has that transition been?
It's been easier than I thought it would be when I was proposed the part. I thought it would be a little bit more challenging. As you say, Build Change has been around for 20 years, led by its founder, Elizabeth Hauser, a charismatic leader. And she stepped aside actually last year, at the end of last year.
Mm.
But when she stepped aside, I was the chief of programs. So I was already leading a big part of the organization. And so the transition was, as I said, a bit smoother than I thought it would be. So far, so good. A lot more
Amazing.
responsibility for sure, but so far, so good.
I'm happy to hear that the transition has been easy so far. I would love to hear kind of your perspective on how your previous roles in the organization informed the work you're now doing as CEO.
Well, as I said, it's been a 13, almost 14-year journey. I started as a
Mhm.
project manager in Haiti and did mostly every job except for accounting that there is at the organization. That has been essential for me now
Mm.
that I'm at the helm of it. I've met basically everyone who works for us and been to every country program substantially. Was in charge of most of those, and also met every donor that we have, heavily involved in business and fund development. So all of that trajectory has been essential for my current role, absolutely.
Incredible. And I would love to, for our audience that's listening in, can you share a little bit more about the work that you were doing and the mission that you're looking to achieve at Build Change?
So we work a lot through organizations who are on the ground, who have either the mandate or the interest of improving existing housing and of improving existing housing practices. As I said, mostly in emerging economies who are vulnerable or exposed to natural disasters. We started out, Elizabeth Hausler, as I said, our founders, started out, she comes from Denver, from San Francisco in California, being an earthquake engineer. So we started out in earthquakes, having to do with earthquakes. The first program as Build Change was in Indonesia after the tsunami there in 2004, 21 years ago. And then we added other capacities as we started moving around to other places like hurricane capacity. We've been interested in now more in more environmental issues like heat stress and things like that. So we work with governments, with NGOs, with private entities, helping them either build better housing from the beginning or improve existing housing that is vulnerable.
I would love to understand your kind of philosophy at Build Change in terms of the entire ecosystem of resilience and where you see kind of building in disaster readiness overall going in the future.
Well, we take a people-centered approach. So for us, it's people first, and that entails very significant changes that we've contributed to the industry of housing resilience globally. Which one concept that Build Change takes credit for is homeowner-driven reconstruction, for instance, where
Mhm.
instead of coming in after a disaster, international development or cooperation would come in and bring whatever solution they thought might be feasible and execute on the ground, whether it was domes in India and strange things like that. And so we take a more people centered approach where people work with what they know and what they have, and we provide the missing links, the missing, be it from a technical standpoint, from an engineering standpoint, from a financial standpoint, or even from a policy standpoint. But it's always the people on the ground making the critical decisions and working with systems and processes that are not foreign or too strange to them to adopt. So that once we pull out or we're no longer part of the picture, the system has been changed and things stay as a permanent change. That's why we're called Build Change.
I love that, and that it's so important, especially whenever you're having these donor conversations, to say like we're going to create a lasting impact and also a sustainable impact in the sense that you don't need to be there constantly monitoring as you pull your resources out. I love that, and something that I think is so important in order to achieve that is that partnership piece. I know that you started as a project manager in Haiti. Tell me a little bit more about how important the partner relations are within Build Change in terms of successfully achieving your mission.
Well, there's only so much we can do directly, and either as hired contractors or technical assistance providers, or executing funds granted to us by a donor. That is more expensive because we're a global organization. That is more expensive and takes more effort than working through people on the ground. So we're only as good as our partnerships, and
Mm,
the way we do most of our work, 80% of our impact is done through others who are on the ground and who are our partners and who believe in us, either to fund us or to listen to our advice. That being, as I said, national governments, local NGOs, or private organizations that are on the ground every day working with people, doing most of the work. So, in that sense, without
I love that.
credibility and partnerships, we would do nothing.
100%. What does a successful partnership look like in your eyes?
A successful partnership is one that produces safer housing. And for that, for us, our metrics are very physical and very clear cut. It's houses. We could talk all day. We can change all the policy we want. We can do as many workshops as you want. In the end, we measure ourselves and our
100%.
impact by safer housing. So our partnerships have to produce safer people and safer housing. And for that to happen, there needs to be trust. There needs to be a very executive mindset where things actually get done. And we don't just wallow into the policy forever and ever. It's in the end that there needs to be housing that's safer.
I would love if you could share a specific example of a success story, in a region that you work on, where y'all identified a problem, y'all were able to work with your partners on the ground and kind of implement lasting impact.
Well, there's several. The first one that comes to mind is we've been working for over 10 years in Colombia, and we got there in 2014, and we thought it would be easy because there's a lot of need. There's a lot of exposed, vulnerable housing,
Mhm.
especially to earthquakes in dense cities in Colombia, and we thought what was missing was the engineering technical piece. So we produced a lot of engineering materials and resources. But then as we went along, we realized the problem, yes, there were some technical engineering pieces missing, but the problem was mostly in the policy piece, where a government that had intention and the money to improve housing was actually tied up in their own red tape. And they hadn't been able to budge for decades, basically, and mobilize money that they had sitting around. So we worked for a long time with the help of others, like other NGOs like Swiss Contact and multilaterals like the World Bank and others, with the Colombian government in changing policy and addressing some systems change there. And we were successful in incorporating that engineering piece of improving existing vulnerable housing from informal sector that was missing, but also in increasing subsidy amounts and the processes of mobilizing those subsidies, either through cities or community organizations. Those changes we made over time and have been producing a lot of results. So that is one successful partnership I can cite, which is a multi-stakeholder partnership, the main player being the government of Colombia, but also, as I said, other actors in the ecosystem.
And that impact that y'all are making, especially at the multi level, as you kind of put it, I love that. If we could dive into kind of funding, funding is at kind of an all time level of uncertainty right now in the nonprofit space. How are you kind of viewing the future of philanthropic funding, especially as y'all do work kind of at that government level?
Well, we have always had like one foot on each side of the shore in terms of our funding sources. On one side, we are a US based nonprofit. We enjoy support from several philanthropies and donors who provide us funding to do unrestricted work. That's usually the hardest to find and the most precious funding we can get. But also, we do consulting and technical assistance provision services. So we sell services, and that we do for multilaterals, for governments, and other clients. So we can balance both. When the philanthropy side is not so great, then we tend to do more of the consulting side and vice versa. It's always an uncertain landscape. It's never been for us a sure shot where we say, okay, we have these donors that will sustain us for the foreseeable future. Usually, donor relationships or corporate partnerships, of which we have a few, have kind of a window. A donor will say, okay, we're interested in you guys. We will support you up to that stage, and then you're on your own. I think there's a
Yeah.
there's a little bit of a conception in many donors and in the space that organizations like ours would have to be self-sustainable at some point, like a sort of a startup enterprise. And we are a social nonprofit enterprise. I think after all these years, I realized that that's a kind of a pie in the sky dream. The reason we are nonprofits is because there is not a commercial interest in what we do, or else we would be competing with commercial firms. So I think both things will always be needed. We will always need some support from philanthropy, from uninterested donors who want us to do good, and we will also have to behave like a business where we sell services and provide useful services to a client. But that synergy between both sides is always important.
100%. I agree so much. I think this year we're seeing how important that diversified funding is. And if there is a service you can provide as a nonprofit, how valuable that is in terms of financial sustainability and longevity. And I know how important that has been for your organization. As you said, y'all have been around, I think, over almost 20 years. And that's a rarity in the nonprofit space. I would love if you could also just share if you had one piece of advice for our nonprofit audience to leave them with.
I think what I've learned in this business is flexibility. You have to be flexible. It's hard to have a permanent growth trend in a commercial business that's successful. It's even harder in nonprofit. So there's always this impetus of, okay, we want to grow our footprint, reach more impact. But sometimes you just have to shrink. Depends on realities and where the things are
Yeah,
going. And you need to be flexible enough that you can shrink when you need to and expand quickly when the opportunity presents itself. That is easier said than done, for sure. But at least we try to keep a core set of staff and capacity that we always sustain, so that if and when we need to grow, we have those good bases from which to grow from.
100%. I love that. And just as we look to the end of the year, what's on the horizon for Build Change? What anything you're excited about coming up?
Well, we just started working in Africa. We have a big project in Mozambique and
Okay.
are exploring more work in places like Mayotte and the Comoros Islands and other countries in that part of Africa. So we're fundraising for that. As the landscape of fundraising is more challenging, the last part of the year is usually fundraising season for nonprofits. So we're getting to that, and we hope to be growing our Africa footprint significantly over the next year. So any support we can garner for that is very welcome.
Amazing. And how would our audience, how would they connect with you? How would they reach your organization?
Well, they can reach us through our website, buildchange.org. And they can, if you want to donate or engage with us through there, that's easily done. As I said, we're a U.S.-based nonprofit. Corporate partnerships are a good way we engage with commercial big corporations, and that's also a possibility through the website. They can reach us anytime, and we're open to either personal donations, corporate engagements, clients who want our services, governments who need our help. We can do all of that.
Amazing. Juan, thank you so much for coming on and sharing more about the multi-level impact you're having in terms of building housing resilience and disaster readiness across the globe. I appreciate the insights you shared and the important mission you are doing. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much, Grayson. Nice to talk to you.